Hey guys, in this video I'll be doing the ultimate comparison between Phil and Ronnie 2013 versus 1999. In my opinion, these two versions perfectly incorporate size and conditioning without sacrificing lines and aesthetics. Both looked near perfect at these two shows, and there's a solid argument for these two versions being the best physiques of all time. Now, before the video does start, if you guys enjoy my videos, a like and sub would be much appreciated as it helps support the channel. With that all being said, let's get into this video. Here's the first pose of the comparison, the front double, and in this one, neither really have any glaring flaws apart from their midsections. They present different yet equally impressive genetics in this pose, with Ronnie having much more width and longer limbs, while Phil has those super round and full muscle bellies. Looking at the focal point of this pose, the arms, you can notice that Ronnie has peaked biceps and larger arms altogether, whereas Phil has longer insertions for both the triceps and biceps, and a deeper separation along with more proportional forearms. The torsos are rather even between the two as they have comparable waist sizes, lat flare, and overall aesthetics. However, Ronnie's, looks much more symmetrical in terms of the abs. The legs are very good for both as they share similar cuts and development. However, Ronnie has longer femurs, which results in seemingly larger looking quads, whereas Phil has denser quads and better calves. Although this pose is close, it's very close, it's as close as it can get even, I think Phil impresses me the most. He has superior calves and forearms, which makes his limbs more complete, fuller muscle bellies in the arms and legs, and just as good of a V-taper. Sure, Ronnie does have larger arms and quads, however, Phil looks so dense and complete, I really just can't ignore that fact. This one could go either way though, as it is extremely close. However, I am going to side just very slightly with Phil. The front lat spread should be an easy win for Ronnie, as his wider clavicles and larger frame should help him win. However, Phil puts together a really good pose. Phil may not be as wide as Ronnie, however, he has great lat development, a good V-taper, amazing quads and calves, and huge arms. Again, the only gripe with Phil is his narrow clavicles, as well as his chest, but that's more of a nitpicky thing on my part. I just don't really like the shape and the overall roundness of the chest in the pose, as opposed to Ronnie's more squared off looking chest. Now, that being said, Ronnie does show just as good of development, if not, better development in the lats, huge quads, and great, amazing upper body size and conditioning. I think Phil has done the best he can here, however, his genetic limitations will not allow him to clench a victory. Ronnie is just too dominant, wide, and muscular for Phil in this pose. The side chest is a ridiculously impressive pose for these two, as their upper bodies are clearly world class and their lower halves are ripped and conditioned perfectly. Looking at the top half, you can see that Phil presents an amazing 3D quality to his muscles that Ronnie really just doesn't have. In particular, his triceps, chest, and hamstring all show this off, and I feel like this gives him a leg up in the pose. Ronnie does have amazing conditioning and size, along with deeper cuts in the side leg. However, Phil really brings the wow factor. That being said, Ronnie does have Phil beat in the delts, which looks absolutely monstrous for Ronnie, and he is matching Phil in terms of size. Here's a second look for Ronnie. Now you can see that his side leg looks a whole lot better. Now, it's a whole lot closer in the side leg since Ronnie presents a lot more separation and deeper cuts, whereas Phil's superior hamstring drop and general shape looks a lot better. If I had to choose between the two, I'd probably pick Ronnie subjectively. I do prefer his shape and the way that he hits the shot. His taller stance looks much more imposing and dominant compared to Phil, who sits all the way down. He really just, I don't know. I don't really like Phil's positioning and posing. Now, in terms of who's winning though, objectively speaking, I think Phil does take this one. His arms, chest, and side leg are so round, full, and large, and his midsection is so much more detailed and he has so much more separation. Sure, he doesn't have the same cuts in the leg, however, his sheer size really does make up for it. The rear double is just a mind-blowing pose for these two. I mean, there are zero weak points. Both have world-class backs, amazing arms, and ridiculous legs. That being said, though, they do have some advantages unique to each of them. For instance, Ronnie has insane glutes, while Phil has amazing forearms and calves. Starting with the arms, both have extremely well-developed and flawless guns. However, Ronnie's peaked biceps and superior size draws my attention first. Phil's deeper cuts and fuller muscle bellies in the arms are less noticeable from behind, and Ronnie takes advantage of that and closes the gap between them. Back for back, I'd say that Phil wins in the traps while Ronnie wins the lats, and they're about equal in terms of overall thickness and density. Phil does win in the delts from behind, however, Ronnie's, overpowering lat width is a little too much for Phil to handle. Legs are a no-brainer in my opinion, as Ronnie crushes Phil in the glutes, pulls ahead in the hamstrings, and really only falls short in the calves. In my opinion, while the upper bodies are close, Ronnie wins this one convincingly by having a slightly better top half, along with obviously the best glutes and hamstrings in the picture. The rear lat spread is basically the same story as the last pose, minus the arms. Ronnie's superior width in the back is clearly evident, just as Phil's dry, granite-esque conditioning is on full display. Phil is clearly drier than Ronnie, as we saw in the last pose. However, Ronnie's size advantage in the back, hamstrings, and glutes is so overwhelming and dominant. There is no way that I can even fathom Phil beating Ronnie here, especially when he's giving up so much width without any more thickness in the back. So with that being said, I think it's pretty clear, but I'm going to give Ronnie the win. In contrast, the side tricep is a pose which I see Phil winning every time against Ronnie, as Phil is better in almost every aspect. Better tricep, fuller chest, larger side leg, and even a tighter midsection. Ronnie looks like a hot mess, midsection all over the place, side leg barely showing, and he's all scrunched together, masking his width advantage. To be fair though, this shot does him really no justice since he's transitioning between the poses. This picture shows you that he clearly pulled off a respectable side tricep, showcasing a tight midsection, feathered tricep, and all around a great package. However, Phil's tricep and thickness superiority would be too much for Ronnie on any day. The Aban Thigh is probably the only pose in which both look rather lackluster, and that's because neither have amazing abs, small waistlines, or amazing V-tapers. They do have great quads and very good conditioning. However, is that really enough to make this a great pose? I don't really think so. Now, looking at the pose altogether, Ronnie seems to be the one pulling ahead. This isn't necessarily because he's standing out to me, rather Phil is actually the one that stands out, and not for a good reason. His narrow clavicles and lack of sufficient V-taper make his lower body look extremely dominant and not proportional to his narrow upper half. Moreover, his midsection is less aesthetic than Ronnie's because of those spilling over obliques and the misshapen abs. Ronnie doesn't really look much better though, however he does have a better V-taper thanks to his structure, as well as a more proportional set of quads. Sure, Phil has a much better set of calves and arguably better quads, however Ronnie's proportions really outdo Phil's, so I'm going to give Ronnie the win. Here's the first variation of the most muscular that we'll be looking at, and in this one you can see that they are both ripped and massive. Phil's 3D muscle bellies might have been at their all-time best here, as he's outclassing Ronnie by a mile in the triceps, delts, and quads, as well as the chest fullness. That being said though, Ronnie's thin skin conditioning was spot on as well, and he clearly has a more ripped chest and thinner skin all around. Although they aren't hitting the same pose, I think that Phil's roundness and fullness would be a little too much for Ronnie to handle. I mean, look at the arms, chest, and quads on both, and tell me that Phil isn't winning here. Moving into the crab most muscular, the last variation that we'll be looking at and the last pose of the comparison, you can see that it's a very similar story to the last pose. Phil is so dense, round, and thick, whereas Ronnie is huge as well, with great conditioning. However, in this variation, I am drawn to Ronnie, as his wider clavicles and wider chest create a much more imposing shot. That being said, Phil is so thick in the chest, delts, and arms, and he definitely presents a more freak factor. I don't know, between them, I do prefer Ronnie. However, objectively, Phil's superior fullness and density might just be enough to win. Alright guys, that about does it for this video. In summary, I had this one ending in a tie, with Phil winning the front double, the side shots, and the most muscular, while Ronnie won the front lat, the back poses, and the Aban Thigh. This comparison could have changed depending on, the closer poses, which were the front double, side chest, and the back poses. So let me know down below what you guys think. I do think that these two versions of these guys are the pinnacle of bodybuilding mass and conditioning, and I really don't think that we'll see physiques like this for a little while. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know down below what videos you'd like to see happen in the near future, and I'll see you all in the next one. Thanks for watching.